Hello and welcome to episode 204 of The Dive Down, a Magic the Gathering podcast focused on the latest decks, trends, and strategies for the casual spike. My name is Stanislav, still here in Chicago for one last week. And with me on the line from Denver, Colorado, it's the one and only Shane Beeps. Shane, Happy New Year. Did I say that last week?
Stanislav, Happy New Year to you. No, I'm not going to be upset that you're here, but I thought last week we said it was your last one for a while. I'm surprised you're here.
You can't get rid of me yet.
He's just going to come at us with needing more time off on the opposite end, Shane. That's what's going on. Exactly. He's rolling over the PTO.
You know who else can't get rid of me yet? It's the Godfather who lent me his office for this episode, Dave Harbarger.
Yes, you are in my office, and I am in my partially unfinished basement, partially finished basement, because the Wi-Fi is so bad with both of us on it. And I'm like sucking in drywall dust here so you can create a podcast.
Yeah, Dave, why did you choose to use asbestos? You're inhaling asbestos. You're redoing your basement. You don't have to use asbestos anymore. It's not the 50s.
I just love vintage. I'm retro, man. I've always been retro. I like original things. I'm a purist.
I listen to 78 rotations per second or BPM. I don't know. What's 78?
I take all of them. Yeah.
Well, the original phonographs were 78s.
Yes.
What is rotations per minute?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So they listen to 78 rotation per minute records. He breathes asbestos. And then you wear those like round hats that have just like red and blue stripes around the brim.
This sounds like lyrics from a song. It's like, who is in his basement and he breathes asbestos, wears a red hat.
It's Dave.
Bilbo Baggins.
On this week's show, we are chatting with the founder of Heavy Play, Randy Chiang. You may have seen the Kickstarter floating around Magic Internet recently. It was on the Magic the Gathering subreddit. We saw it in our Discord. We were really impressed with the products. Dave and I gave him some money for the Kickstarter, and then we said, hey, why don't we invite him on the show? And he graciously agreed to talk about product design in the card game space.
Yeah. Not sponsored content, just genuine enthusiasm from us to talk to somebody who is getting to try out, live their dream of making something cool in the card game space. So wanted to bring Randy on just to talk about that. It's a good interview, so hope you enjoy it. Yeah, we already did it.
Because we already did it. Yeah, that's the important thing.
Then we're diving into our own personal, professional, competitive goals for 2023 as Magic players, as podcasters, as friends, and as lovers.
Stan, you're not doing that thing that happens in movies where you're about to leave town and then you're going like, I have one last chance to confess to people. You're not doing that, are you?
I'm hoping that you would do that for me at O'Hare on Monday.
Okay.
Before all that, though, let's housekeep. We do have some new patrons to kick off the new year. Thank you to JMDC, Christian M, and James S for joining the Dive Down Nation. We appreciate you all for your support. Also, shout out to Castle Orange for leaving us a review on iTunes. Thank you so much. Always inflates our egos a little bit. If you'd like to support the show, you can leave us a review, but you can also do that financially over at patreon.com/thedivedown. You can also support us while playing Magic online with a Mana Trader subscription. Use promo code THEDIVEDOWN10, all one word, to get 10% off your first 2 months of renting Magic Online cards. You can also save some money while playing paper Magic. Over at Nerd Rage Gaming, we don't get a kickback for this. This is just for you, the listener. Use promo code DIVE8. Get 8% off your order of Magic the Gathering cards. So now we're going to do a seamless transition into our interview with Randy Chiang from Heavy Play. So join us for that. And afterwards, we'll be back to talk about our goals for 2023.
I'm just going to assume that, Tanner, our editor, is just going to put some cool sound effects, some kind of like shimmer, some dream sound, make this transition real smooth.
Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else aboard, transition TDD1. This is your editor speaking. First, Happy New Year. We're glad you're making this transition with us. On the other side, you'll hear from Randy Chiang, founder and CEO of Heavy Play, about some My notes say here super dope, very sick play products that, again, referring to the notes, most definitely have a vibe. I'll remind you to have your headphones and volume knobs in proper position, and should anything go sideways during this transition, remember that it's standard operating procedure to hit the fast forward button on your own podcast player before tapping the screens of those near you who may need assistance doing the same. Again, thank you for choosing the Dive Down Transitions, and we'll see you on the other side.
We are here today with Randy Chiang, founder, president, CEO, and according to my records, the actual only employee of Heavy Play, the newest up-and-coming MTG and card game accessory company that we're really excited to have on the show to talk about your Kickstarter, your vision for Magic accessories, a little insight into what it's like producing products for card games and a market that's pretty saturated, but maybe lacking innovation, perhaps. But first, I'd love to introduce you to the listeners. For those who haven't seen the Heavy Play Kickstarter yet, you can find that via heavyplay.com. We also have a link in the show notes. But we should also start with a brief introduction to Randy. I'm curious, what's your favorite Magic the Gathering card?
That's got to be Lord of Atlantis. I'm a fish player. Go blue.
Just like Shane.
Yeah, there's something about playing fish that doesn't seem right. It's like you're playing like bears in a blue deck, and there's interaction. So, and just from a flavor standpoint, starting at the beginning of the game, Lord of Atlantis just like connected.
So Randy, did you start all the way back? I mean, I watched the Kickstarter video, but it's been a minute, so I know you talked about your background a little bit. But you started way back, right? Revised around then, or when was your beginning?
No, I started probably playing in like Tempest block, and then I mean that's back when like you could still find all the random old cards like still on the shelf. So probably bought too many packs of like Homelands and Fallen Empires, and then realized that's garbage. But yeah, I've been playing a long time. Just kind of, I think like a lot of Magic players have taken breaks here and there when there's other stuff in life, but the game brings you back. So there's like lots of play during that time up through like Invasion block, and then came back during Ravnica and played for a long stretch, and then Cons block. I hear you guys talk about it. Yeah, that was a period of like, okay, the format's great. Let's play a ton. So, not always playing, but when I am, it's with that spike mentality of like, I'm here to, win and play a good deck.
So Merfolk's your all-time favorite deck. Is there a favorite deck? Is there a deck that you performed the most with, like a standard format that you remember the most? Because I know you got those spike memories too.
Man, going way back, it's like Rebels with like Lin Civi.
Sure.
Wow.
Yeah, during that period, there's something about like White Weenie, that I just connect with too.
Yeah. It's that was a powerful deck.
Yeah, wasn't Rebels a deck that like saw bans in that era of Standard?
Yeah, and that's like when Block Constructed existed too, when Civi was out. But that was like against like Rising Waters, and this is going way back, but that was like a fun time to play.
Yeah, those are awesome decks. So how do you play Magic today? Like what's your favorite format? How do you engage at the moment?
Yeah, I think for me now, I'm a dad of like two young kids, a 4-year-old and almost 2-year-old. So my play group has shifted to dads who are designers and Magic players who wait for the kids to fall asleep and then jump on Spell Table and try to squeeze in games here and there. But it's been pretty difficult to make it to an event because most of the time it's booked with the kids.
Yeah, I feel you. I mean, I happen to be a designer as well. I'm a graphic designer. I have 2 young children, and my way is sort of like saying, wait for the kids to go to sleep. I hop on Moto a lot, or I do the podcast with these guys, but definitely like trying to figure out how to stay with the Magic dads as a way to engage. Our Discord even has an extremely active parenting channel where the Magic dads talk to each other about, hey, what do you think about this game for my kid or whatever. But so I feel that for sure.
In one of the muted channels.
Yeah, Shane mutes that channel aggressively. He has no reason to be there, but yeah, that's awesome.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
I guess what we should talk about is why we have you on the show. And we actually just came across your Kickstarter for your company, Heavy Play, and all the stuff that you are making with it. And honestly, we were just intrigued by it. We just thought it was looked really cool, looked like a fresh way to look at some products. And importantly, I think for us and people listening, is that this isn't sponsored content. Like, we were just interested in it. Dave and Stan just were like, yeah, I invested in the Patreon. It seemed really good. And we reached out to you to come on the show because we have interest in talking to you, like, as a designer, as a product creator. And you did send us some stuff to check out so that we could actually talk to you about it and talk about our experiences with it. But long story short, we're not getting any cash from you. You're not getting any cash from us. We're just here to talk about a cool Magic product.
Well, he might be getting some cash from me and Dave, because I provided my credit card number.
True, fair. But let's talk about it. So Heavy Play. So why?
Yeah. Why does any of this exist? So for me, like, I've been playing Magic forever, and I have a sketchbook of just, these are all the product ideas around Magic that I wish I saw. And then my background as a designer is from the mobile accessory space. So cases, phones, tablets, things like that. I worked at Spec Products for 7 years, and then most recently was VP of design at Pop Sockets for 4 years. So similar kind of size product, and there's like a mobility challenge there. Like the huge difference between that industry and what I saw in the gaming space was, one is just like build quality. Like, if you've ever taken apart a flip style deck box, those things are chipboard, it's cardboard inside. Most of the stitching is fake, it's hand glued. You squeeze it a little, you hear the creaking inside. So just like build quality as a designer, man, I've always looked at the products and been like, someone can do this better. And so I felt like there was one opportunity there just to elevate the product. And the next was just from an experience standpoint. So many of the existing companies are more rooted in collectibles, and you see this in like the naming of the brands and the products, and it's all about protection and guard or shield, and it's focused on the cardboard and not necessarily like the player of the game. And so thinking about that, it's like, what is the opportunity here for players and the focus on the game experience as well as like the game day experience, and how to give you that edge. So that was like the insight, and so that led to the name Heavy Play, like kind of a play on the card grading system. So rather than being gem mint and we're all about putting things in top loaders and preserving them and never touching them, like, we're here for people that actually play their cards, right? It's about the play experience.
Yeah, and great job on the name. I got to say, as somebody who works on naming sometimes, it is not easy. And so great job on getting a name that I think was resonant immediately with the audience, and then also getting a URL. Like, having a URL that was clear there, because I actually find it hard to believe that heavyplay.com was free, but good job on getting that good primary URL, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, so someone was squatting on it, so I had to pay for it. But I got it, yeah.
Hopefully not too much. Fingers crossed for you there, but yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great insight. That, like, I mean, I feel like that was a really good product pitch from someone who knows how to talk about the design work that they're doing, right? Like, that you crystallized that insight was really great to just say, like, nobody's talking about the play experience on these things. And I think that is true when you look at the products that people have. And I'm not trying to talk badly about the products that are out there in the market necessarily, you know what I mean, right now. But I love that thought that it's really how can I improve the experience of using these things when someone's actually playing a tournament, instead of just when they're in your backpack or just protecting the cards.
Yeah, I think something else to look at is like PC gaming and esports, where like the accessories market around gaming for that industry is about like giving you a competitive edge. But that doesn't really exist within the card gaming space. Like a playmat is a playmat, a deck box is a deck box. It's largely been commoditized, and it's about more of like a self-expression play, right? It's like, what is the print on this playmat? Versus there actually being an experience difference and trying to give you an edge.
I would think, though, that like to some extent, the higher quality products in the accessory space also exist to offer convenience, right? Like via playmats, like playing on a playmat is more convenient than just like a plastic picnic table,
Yeah, if you look at existing playmats, like everyone's kind of making the same thing. So I think there's no question of like playmat versus no playmat. Yeah, there's an upgrade of that play experience, but to a large degree, everyone is making the same product today.
So what's different about the heavy play stuff that you're working on? I mean, like it's pretty, when you go to the Kickstarter page, we can see the video that you have and the features that are listed and things like that. But really, what is your incentive for doing something new here? Like what was missing from the existing product suite that you wanted to you make a product that filled the niche?
Sure, I think the playmat is the kind of starting point of everything when it comes to the product ecosystem. And the insight there was just my pet peeve of having to roll up playmats. Like once you start playing with a playmat, you realize, okay, I have to transport this. I got to store it somewhere. So you roll it up and then it comes undone, and then you discover, oh, they make these tubes. And then you have to actually like flip the way you roll your playmat so it doesn't get stuck in the tube. And then you realize the tubes don't fit in your backpack, and then they break. And so overall, that whole experience really sucks.
And then if you're me, you also discover that the cap to the tube breaks easily and disappears, and then you just have like an open tube for the next 4 years.
Same here. It's like let's just keep it vertical and we'll be copacetic, hopefully.
Or you store it on the outside of your backpack in that water bottle pocket, and you hope it doesn't fall out. And then you kind of telegraph to everyone, hey, look, like this is like the gaming backpack. And so the whole experience I've just always found poor as a user.
So what is different about kind of the core product of the playmat with heavy play?
Right. So there's embedded rigid panels within the playmat so it can fold up. So rather than rolling it, it's a really quick folding action. This is inspired by like folios from the kind of iPad space, using that style of construction. So everything's welded together, stitchless. It's held together with like hot melt. There's integrated magnets for closure. So same play experience in terms of it being polyester and having that cushion. So wanting to replicate that, but completely change the mobility and storage aspect. And it fits within a 15-inch laptop sleeve too.
I guess it's important to note that Stan and Dave actually received some of this stuff, but mine is delayed from, I think, the recent weather issues. So I have not seen any of this stuff, but Stan and Dave have, and I'm really looking forward to hearing kind of what their experiences were using these products for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a really nice time just taking a giant stack of cards and doing a bunch of random testing with deck boxes and the playmat. One of the things that we haven't mentioned yet is part of the DNA of this product, which is maybe the selling point for me and why I decided to invest in the Kickstarter, was everything has magnets. So the playmat is sealed with magnets, and you can attach your deck box or dice boxes to the playmat with magnets, or attach dice boxes to one another with magnets, or dice boxes to deck boxes and more deck boxes with magnets. So everything is really modular, but also really tightly connected. And I can't tell you how much time I spent playing with magnets. I was like a 10-year-old with like a bunch of loose magnets that are like choking hazards, but now they had cards in them as well. So really excited to talk about that actual hands-on experience, both to share with the listeners, but maybe even hear a little bit of your reactions, Randy, to a Wii experience, because we got to play with prototypes and they probably are going to be a little bit different than what actually goes to market.
Yeah, so let me hit on the Equip Mag system. So you're right. All of our deck boxes, dice boxes, the playmat have integrated magnets. So for your dice, you can kind of backpack them onto your deck box. That way you don't have to worry about managing multiple sets of dice or whether your deck has dice or not. I found that was always a problem, that I'd have a bunch of decks in boulders that I wanted to take with me, and then I'm also lugging around this satin tower just for the dice, even though I don't want the deck that's in there. So you're like, yeah, did I bring dice or not? And so this way you can just have a single set of dice, and you can easily kind of hot swap it from deck to deck. The magnets in the deck boxes also allow you to bundle them. So if you have dual decks and you want to make sure that they stay paired, or you're thinking about what formats you're playing, and I'm going to my LGS, I want to bring one modern deck, one commander deck, bam, you can just snap them together and go. And then the super cool part when it comes to the actual play experience is snapping them onto the playmat. So when you're packing up between rounds, maybe you went to turns and you're stressed out, you're a little like tilted, and you got to go find your next match. Right now, you have to like carry all these loose things or chuck them in your bag and find your next pairing. So this way, you can just snap your deck and your dice onto your playmat, and then just carry it all in a single hand. So you can just carry it like a tray and have it all attached securely.
Yeah, I got to say it was interesting to actually play around with that and kind of feel the experience with that, and then think about those moments where you are kind of rushing, or you're at the beginning of a round, you're like digging in your backpack to be able to find all the different pieces that you need, and then really it's all just right here.
Yeah, and I love that the magnets, you call them quick magnets. I like that it almost has its own proprietary name, and they felt super secure in my...
Equip. It's Equip Mag.
Equip Mag.
Not quick.
Even better.
Yeah, so it's like equipment, but magnets. Equip Mag.
Yeah.
Perfect for all the Hammer players listening to the show. But I tried to stress test it, and it felt super secure. I was throwing it at my couch. They were just staying on the playmat with a deck full of cards and a dice box full of 6-sided and 20-sided dice. So that felt really safe. I want to also share, while playing with the actual playmat, one thing I found was that the backside that faces the table, or the surface of the table, has so much friction. It's just not moving anywhere. And that's not necessarily an issue I ever had with traditional playmats, but it's something that's so noticeable that if you put a card on the backside of the playmat, like, you can't really move that card around. It has to be on the polyester side, because the amount of friction that you've put together with whatever that material is. Is it a rubber polymer of some kind?
Yeah, this is it's like a special anti-slip polyester, or PU. Went through tons of material testing. Even that, like, the diamond cut pattern was tested against like dozens of other graphic iterations, and like this holds its place. Like, this has the kind of best friction performance out of everything I tested.
I did find that the surface of the playmat that you play on, it didn't feel exactly like what I'm used to from a traditional playmat. And I don't know if that's because I had a prototype, or if that's just because it's designed differently and it's, polyester on something other than whatever stuffing traditional playmats have.
Yeah, I mean, you're really used to playing on a giant mouse pad, right?
Yes,
which is kind of what Randy calls it in the Kickstarter video. It is a giant, like, rubbery mouse pad. And so what's the play surface made of in the heavy playmat?
Yeah, it's a polyester, just like you would find on a standard playmat. I think compared to traditional playmats, there's maybe slightly more cushion in there. It depends on the brand that you're going with. For whether they're using like neoprene or natural rubber. Our playmats have an EVA foam, so it's trying to get the maximum amount of cushion in there while still keeping the playmat thin. So underneath the polyester, there's EVA foam, and then there's the polycarbonate panels, which have fiberglass laminate on them to help cover the magnets, so you don't see the magnets. And then on the backside, you have that special anti-slip PU.
And so this is one moment I'd really love to zoom in for a second and talk about. You talked about testing materials and all those kind of things. How did you do that, and how long did it take you to kind of decide exactly what you wanted to construct it? Because think of the details you just talked about. The front and the back have to be different. We need the foam. The foam has to cover the magnets. The magnets have to be a certain strength, so they probably have to be a certain size to be a certain strength to perform like the bond that you're talking about, so it doesn't slip off the mat. Like, what was that testing and iteration process like?
Yeah, if you go to my garage, there's just like stacks of boxes just filled with prototypes. At home, I have my own 3D printer and laser cutter, so able to do a good amount of rough prototyping there. But then moving that over to my factories and having them, build the samples in their samples rooms, actually tooling everything up, and committing to do it for real. Material testing, like early on, there was questions of, how close is this to an existing playmat? Or is this more, coming from the case space, like a folio, maybe there's microfiber on the inside. But when you get to certain fabrics, you lose out on like the tapping experience. You want it to be a fast surface for your cards to slide around. So it's like, oh no, it needs to maintain that polyester that you're used to. Otherwise, the gameplay feels really slow. And then how do you maintain this exterior that has enough friction when you're actually playing, but it's not too sticky that you can't get it in and out of your bag. So there's multiple competing factors there, and just looking good, right? Versus existing playmats. You really think of that back or that underside as non-cosmetic. It's functional, but in this product, it's actually your first impression of it. So it's got to read at that level, but then also function just as well.
Yeah. And I had to say that was the one thing that struck me about the mat was, like you mentioned, the exterior of it is the first thing you see. And I didn't even realize that there were. So when I looked at the Kickstarter, I was very into the boxes, right? And I kind of forgot about the mats. And then when I got the samples, I was playing with the boxes, and then I reached in there and I was like, oh, the mats are in here too. And they are thin. I just want people to understand, like, they're going to be really easy to fit into people's backpacks. And so and that experience of opening them up, they're thin, but they're solid. Like, they feel like, that was really considered, and they're not going to be bulky for someone to carry around. I don't think.
Are they less than a centimeter thin?
Looks like it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes,
I'll put him on the spot with this measurement stand.
It's a few millimeters. Well,
Yeah.
I'm moving to England, so I'm getting used to the metric system.
Exactly.
But even us Americans recognize that millimeters very small.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right at there. Like, off the top of my head, it's 9.5 or 10 millimeters at like the thickest point when you have the kind of three panels.
Mhm.
So you're showing me you just held up the mat with a deck box and a dice box. It looked like magneted to this folded play mat, and it looks really tidy. And Dave, Stan, you've experienced these things with the magnets. How does this work? Like, is this the kind of thing like you're just going to grab it, fold it, slap it to the playmat, tuck it under your arm, and just walk around for 5 minutes between rounds? Is it like that reliable where you're like, I don't think this is going to fall off?
That was my sense, that they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
That I can go from one table to the next without having to put anything in my backpack and feel safe.
Or you can't even chuck it in your backpack and it's just going to stick to the mat, right? You just grab the mat, pull it out, and you're good to go.
Yeah. And that's actually kind of how I see myself using it more. I will say a couple of quick things. The magnets are on the like there's three segments of the play mat. So there's like two similar sized ones and then a small one that's kind of like a folio flap, right? The magnets are in the folio flap and they're at the top and the bottom of the folio flap. So that's where you're going to be sticking your stuff, right, Randy? So there's not space in the middle where you can also attach things to. It's really one deck box, one dice box to one mat, right?
Yeah. So within this playmat, you're right. That small panel, that folio flap,
Yep.
That's where there's the strongest magnets within that. So it's actually slightly thicker than the other two panels. Right. And then there's magnets that it connects to within the larger panel. And then, it's okay that panel's slightly thicker because that's your library graveyard zone. So you're not interacting with it as much versus like the kind of like main play area. And then in the
also
backs,
not noticeable, by the way, not to interrupt, but it's not noticeable that it's thicker, I would say, when you're playing with it. I didn't notice it, at least, for what it's worth.
Okay, great. That's the goal. And then in the back side of the deck boxes, there's magnets that correspond to that. So within the playmat, there's kind of two docking zones, one for your deck and then one for your dice. And if you're left-handed and you want that panel on the other side, like it works just as well for you too.
How are these deck boxes, Stan, Dave? Are they essentially like equivalent to like Ultimate Guard in size, or?
So great transition, Shane. And part of why is because it also helps answer your initial question about how reliable the playmat felt. Part of the security that I experienced in just my few hours of stress testing was that the RFG deck box Max, that box in particular, also feels exceptionally secure because it's sealed with a magnet. So let's say someone bumps into me or bumps my playmat and knocks something off that's supposed to be magnetized to it. I don't even feel like that RFG deck box Max is opening up.
Yeah, no way. Totally agree.
I think what's really unique about the Max deck box is the fact that the closure is on the bottom, right? Like most flip style deck boxes, the closure is on that front surface, so your cards are pushing against your cover and allow it to pop open. So just having the closure magnets being on the opposite side of that top opening gives you like a tensile strength versus a shear strength. So you're just getting more bang for your buck when it comes to that magnet strength. So yeah, it's super secure. So that's a unique feature. And then the extra bonus of all of this, the equip magnets on the back, is it also allows you to dock that cover in an open position. So I don't know if you've got experience at, but that's also for people that want to keep the deck box open. That's kind of like you being able to double dip and get more value out of those magnets.
I found that the deck boxes, each deck box reminded me of, to some extent, other products in the marketplace. The regular RFG deck box, I think you can compare it to Ultimate Guard boulders, which isn't to say it's redundant or derivative of that, but I think that's kind of the space you're in, where it's two plastic compartments that clip together. You can interchange the colors if you have multiples, but the key difference to me is that you have this heavy play system where you can attach the regular RFG deck boxes to a magnet. The RFG Max, to me, Shane, reminded me of a little bit of the deck box that you use, which I can't recall that specific brand because I don't use that deck box.
They're Ultimate Guards too. It's the Ultimate Guard flip trays, or the ones that.
Oh yeah, the flip and tray. Yeah,
they're more like the flip and trays. I will say both of these boxes are, like, the heavy play boxes are bigger and more like sturdily constructed than the boulders or the flip and trays. Either one for sure. Like they're a little slightly larger, but you can tell that they're also a lot more secure. Not that I use Ultimate Guard right now, so I'm not trying to say something bad about that product. It's just they're a little bit bigger in a good way.
Yeah. So in terms of interior dimension, they benchmark like 1-to-1 versus the Ultimate Guard. So for the 80DS or the 100DS, you'll find the interior dimensions being equivalent. They are slightly taller than the Ultimate Guard boxes, but they're the same sort of X and Y as a top loader. So anything that would fit a top loader is going to fit these boxes as well. So if you have like an archive, you can fit all of these deck boxes within it.
Yes. And that's something else that I tested too, is like, can I just put these in an archive? Can I put these in an archive side by side with my boulders? And the answer was yes. And I can even find eventually a certain configuration where they all fit so smoothly. Right now, my archives have like this little annoying gap, even when I fill them full of boulders that don't quite max out the space. Heavy Play helped me fill that space out finally.
Awesome. Yeah, the boxes are great, though. And I love the peekaboo window that you talk about in the Kickstarter where it shows you can put a card that helps you remember. Because I will say, that is, I'm a person who buys accessories that are all one color, right? So all my deck boxes are smoke gray. All of my archives are black. And so I have to label them.
Oh my gosh, you're a monster.
Somehow. And not having to label them is awesome. So.
No, I'm the exact same way. Like before all of this, all of my deck boxes were black, and I just had tons of different, brands and styles. But for me, I just wanted it in black. But then I would take a few weeks off from playing, and then come back to it and be like, I cannot find my deck. And then you're popping open every single one. So the insight here was just, okay, how do I make it easier to find the right deck? And then especially for people like Commander players that really want to show off, this is my Commander, this is the signature card. So for both of our lines of boxes, there is that what we're calling the showcase window. So on the Max line, it's a clear window with a scratch protective coating. And then on our baseline of RFG, it's just a polished window within that polycarbonate shell. So the rest of the box is matte, but then you actually have a polished section, which is a little thinner too. So it's just a bit more translucent for you to see that card.
It's awesome. So let's talk about a couple last things before we let you go for the night. So one is, let's talk about the sleeves. I will say, watching the Kickstarter, not knowing what I was about to see, watch the whole Kickstarter about the mat and the boxes, and then you're like, yeah, and I have sleeves too. And I was basically like, get out of here. I was kind of like, you made sleeves as well? Like, that was really kind of a surprise to me when we got into the whole discussion. So how did you approach that? It's just a totally different, I think it's a pretty different space than the matte box kind of thinking.
Sure. So just from a process standpoint, like the playmat, that concept was baked really early on. And then it was, okay, let's let's think long term and let's think wide. And before we go and start designing the next product, like where do we want to be? And so that was the time thinking about brand and competitive play and what is our advantage. And there's like ergonomics and mobility and protection. And okay, what are we going to do with sleeves? Eventually, we need to make sleeves. And this is also a super commoditized space where everyone's kind of making the same product. What are they competing on? They're competing on price, durability, style. Like, what is the art print or the color on this? And so for something that's so simple and ubiquitous, like, where is the innovation? Where are you going to find it on something that's so limited? And so just happenstance of like just staring at the card sleeve. What can I do with this? There's only so much room to like add or subtract, and it was all about just subtracting those corners and just a quick hack of let me just grab a pair of scissors and cut the corners off my sleeves, and it just felt great. And for something that's so simple, it is. I actually think the sleeves are the best, biggest product out of the whole line, with the biggest chance to disrupt, because it's for me, it's just like a clearly like strictly better type of experience. It feels great in hand. It reminds you of like when you used to play before you knew there were sleeves, just like as a kid again, like what cardboard feels like. It being asymmetrical is also super key, so that you don't put your card back in your deck upside down and you're mass shuffling and you catch a card and you split it. That's just the worst feeling.
I would love to never have to rub my thumb on the edge of my deck to be like, is this the right side or the left side? You know what I mean? Like, is this the top or the bottom?
And then, so doing the research for this, there's other companies that have kind of tried to make rounded corner sleeves. And then I think the issue with those is they round the top corners, and that makes them really prone to splitting. You're really like inviting it to split because you're bringing the seam down. So the unique aspect of this design, which is patent pending, is the asymmetrical quality to it.
And the interior of the sleeves, they're also like so let's compare these sleeves to other sleeves, right? Like, they're not classic Dragon Shield. They're closer to Dragon Shield matte. And in fact, they're almost closer to Dragon Shield dual matte because the interior is black, even though the exterior has a color.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It'll be closest to the dual matte or like an Eclipse style sleeve. So black interior with a colored exterior.
Yes. That's really nice. And I did try to put a regular double sleeve or a regular
inner sleeve
into your curved sleeve, and it fit. It doesn't stick out. I felt like it looked a little awkward. And for that reason, I felt like if and when I'm using the heavy play curved sleeves, it just looks more and fits more elegantly when you also use the curve inner. And this sort of builds on like this whole ecosystem of products sort of all designed to work together and look nicest. I feel like that's something worth sharing for people who like maybe have hundreds of cards and a modern podcast about how many cards they have. That's all double sleeved in the same sleeves. And even though I re-sleeve a deck anytime I take it to a big paper tournament, I think for my own like anal retentiveness, I know I'm going to want to put my cards into curved inners before I put them into the curved outer sleeves, just because otherwise, like, there's a juxtaposition otherwise.
No. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that insight. So yeah, it will be compatible with most inner sleeves, but it's not perfectly, centered or concentric within that corner. And that's why we have our own inner sleeves. So they are bottom loading, and it's the bottom corners that are also rounded. So everything is just nicely concentric and your card is perfectly centered. The aesthetics matter.
Randy, you're going to have to send me at least 2,000 of these if you're going to want me to change over, because this ain't happening, my friend. I can't wait to like actually experience these though, because the round bottom like makes sense to me. Like, just like the shuffling, like curved surfaces should just move more nicely in that fashion. But how do you guys experience that? Did you practice some shuffling up and see how it worked?
Yes. And I will reserve my final judgment until I can take these to like a 5-round tournament. I think that's really the ultimate stress test. At home, putting some cards into these sleeves, especially into inners and outer sleeves, it felt fine and great. It feels differently in your hand because it is curved at the bottom. So I think there is that, process of getting used to this new physical sensation, but it didn't feel less than. And it definitely did not feel like sharp and it was poking my palm. which is not something I've ever had to focus on in the past, but you notice a difference immediately. And I think over time, with enough experience, you can get used to it and maybe even eventually learn to appreciate it. At least that's what my assumption is for you, Randy, and your design philosophy is like getting people to appreciate some of these new products and how they change what we're used to among TCG accessories.
Yeah, I mean, I just love the thinking behind all these things. Like it's felt for a long time, like you said, that a lot of these things are kind of taken as given, right? All of the different aspects of the way that things are made and just going back and someone really putting their effort, design sense into thinking about the details of every moment of being a Magic player, playing with your cards all the time, having to sort your cards, having to find your cards into your house, sleeving them, like all of those things. It's really just refreshing to have somebody with kind of like your experience and skill in another, highly complex but somewhat commoditized space as well. Like cases you have to really think about how to make things stand out in that space too. And Spec always did a great job at that. Pop Socket was something that I know really like blew people's minds a lot too, as far as just people who want that experience of having an additional way to hold on to their phone. And all the other things that you guys did there. So it's great to have somebody with your experience come and look at this market, I think. And that's awesome. So I think, to kind of close it out, let's talk a little bit about how people can support you. We talked about the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter ends on January 15th. You want to talk a little bit about like where you would have people take a look at the Kickstarter if they wanted to find the best entry point with you, and maybe kind of what your plans are in the immediate future that you're willing to share?
Yeah, so the easiest way to find it is just go to heavyplay.com, and then you can just link to the Kickstarter from there. We still have a ways to go when it comes to funding, but just rest assured, I will personally, close the gap if there is still a gap at the end. From a financial standpoint, we're solid and we're committed to all of this. So everything's been tooled. Production has started on some of the products. All of this is going live with the published schedule. So Kickstarter is really an opportunity for people to, come in at ground level, get the best price, get the product first, be part of the process. So I'd love to have people come out to support. Definitely looking to the Dive Down Nation for that. But either way, rest assured that this is going to pass. We're committed. We're pot committed at this point.
So a question I had, I guess, that we didn't talk about, is this kind of what you're doing right now? Like, is this your full-time thing? Are you kind of doing this on the side? Or you're like fully going for it?
This is the job. This is the career. I left my position at PopSockets just over a year now. So we've been kind of just in stealth mode, developing all these products, with my vendors, getting all of this ready for launch. But everything is committed to, and there's partners in terms of distribution, warehousing, logistics. So everything is in line. We are like full on in go mode. This is the job now.
That's awesome. Wow, living the dream.
Yeah,
I love
I'm jealous.
it. If we could figure out a way to make this podcast be our full-time jobs, we've told people the stretch goal is $200,000 an episode for us to make this our full-time job. So we'll see. Someday, maybe.
Is there a potential future where we can have Dive Down branded heavy play playmats? That's going to be the hardest thing for me to abandon my stupid mouse pad, is that I just unfurl it and my opponents immediately have fear in their eyes because they know we have, dozens of listeners, the people who listen to my opinions.
We can make it happen. We can do a collab.
All right.
Awesome. Well, Randy, anything else you want to say to people before we kind of take off?
Yeah, happy to be on the podcast. Definitely love the stuff that you guys do. Thanks for keeping 60 card paper formats alive.
Hey, we're trying.
So, definitely. I hope our products, our brand really connect with the Dive Down Nation. Like, these are definitely the people that I'm thinking about when I'm designing. It's going to events, trying to maximize win rate and get that edge. That's definitely what inspires the products is, how do you eliminate distractions? How do you improve your focus so that you play to your outs, you find the line. Like, all of that is just part of our DNA of just how do I squeak out a few extra percentage points.
Can I use the product but also perform poorly? Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that happens. You can scrub out some days.
Yeah.
Sorry, Shane. Get used to winning.
I'm sure there's going to be like O2 drops in the future. It'll just happen.
All right, Randy Chiang, thank you so much for joining us for this brief interview. Really excited to finally get my hands on the final product next year.
This year.
Oh man, it's 2023. I forgot.
We're in 23 already.
Yeah, so this year we're going to get some new accessories. I can't wait to take them to a tournament and finally beat my opponents just because I'm using a little less brain power curling up playmats and trying to find the lid to my deck box somewhere on the floor. So guys, as you know, I'm moving to England next week.
Oh, really?
It's true. And I'll be in northern England, in Manchester. And just outside of Manchester is a region known as Cheshire. So to get ready for the move, I've been using Barrister & Mann's Cheshire soap, and I love it. It has me drinking tea, craving cod, and calling fries chippies.
What's the character of Cheshire?
It's a cat, usually.
Oh.
Feline, I would say.
Oh, feline?
Yeah.
Stan, I went and I purchased my own soap dish. Okay, I got like a soap dish because I didn't have a soap dish because I don't ever use bar soap. And I was like, look, I've got a bunch of these bars of soap. I really need to start using these. And I got one for myself for the Xmas times, and I love the soap. The Taiga soap is so nice for like the winter holiday seasons. I cannot wait to just blow through it. I mean, I'm washing my hands constantly because I just want to like run through it and then have a new bar to work with. Also, I use the Atomic Holiday shaving soap sample that I got from Will recently, and that was a sort of a holiday creation. If you want to talk about atomic energy scent homages, and this thing rules. Like if you're like a big scent person and you're into like fragrances and stuff like that, you may know of the fragrance called M7 Fresh, which is like this famous discontinued men's fragrance, which is kind of like this interesting sort of fruity thing. And man, Atomic Holiday takes me back to when I had like a sample of that, and it's just like this pineapple, lime, bergamot type thing going on. And I'm definitely ordering a full tub of that for myself. So I'd recommend getting that before it's off for the season.
So the Cheshire fragrance also features bergamot. What's bergamot? I'd never heard of that before.
Smells good. It's in a lot of stuff I like.
I think it's something one of the Three Kings had with them.
Well, there you go. If you're looking for a scent to try out, Atomic Holiday is a pick by Shane. Cheshire is a pick by Stan. You can't go wrong with either. If you'd like to use our promo code, it's the DiveDown15, all one word, gets you 15% off your first order from Barrister & Mann. Check it out over at barristerandmann.com.
Bergamot's a kind of orange, by the way. All right, here we are. And what we wanted to do this week with the rest of our time was do our first show of the year the way we've done it the last several years, which is talk about our goals for whatever during the next year, during 2023, during this new, I can't believe it's 2023. We're going to talk a little bit about our goals as players, our goals as content creators, and maybe even our goals as people. Shane?
I feel like this is something we do every year, right? We've done this, I think, is this the fourth time or the third time? I don't even know anymore.
I believe this would be the third time, because if this was the fourth time, it would have been after we had 3 episodes.
Yes, that would be silly.
I think then we were mostly still trying to decide if we wanted to have School of Fish, 3 Strange Days as our theme song anymore, if we need to transition to something else.
I think there was only 1 episode because we were like, we're going to get sued. We're going to have something bad happen. No, we've done this, most years that we've run this podcast, and I think it's always embarrassing to kind of look back at them and be like, what didn't I do that I said I was going to do? And I think ultimately what I like about these episodes is not like holding us accountable. I think it's really important to have goals that make sense to you and sort of try to drive a mindset, I think, more than ultimately, this doesn't work. Do you know what I mean? Well, I guess it is work, but it's not like, your boss is going to come to you at the end of year of the dive down and be like, hey, I think we need to some improvement here and some success here. I think really for me, what I like about having these conversations with you all is think like sort of collaborating together on what it means to improve as Magic players and as people and as podcast hosts. And that's really what I like getting out of these conversations myself.
Totally agree. I think it's more about just checking in on each other, seeing where we're at, maybe even seeing where each other think we're at as well, and get a little bit of feedback as we think about things to do. I mean, relationships with Magic amongst all of us have changed over the years that we've been doing the show in lots of different ways. And this is just another place to kind of recognize that and talk about how we want to evolve that too. Because this is a Magic show, even though we've talked about not a lot of competitive content so far this week.
I mean, it's the doldrums of the year. It's a perfect time to talk to Randy, a perfect time to talk to each other. And I think, with let's just talk about the Stan-shaped elephant in the room on an airplane, taking up at least 2 seats. With Stan leaving to the UK, it makes sense for us to talk about, I guess, goals for the show and just kind of ideas and opportunities that presents for us.
I'll have you know that second seat is for my toddler. All right.
On a pile of Magic cards, on a pile of heavy play boxed Magic cards flying to the UK.
Exactly. That's just where he gets the most cushion.
All right. So let's talk about the show for a minute. Do we want to start with talking about the show? I think we're going to talk about it in 3 segments. Let's talk about the show. Let's talk about ourselves as Magic players. And then if anybody has anything else they want to throw in like a wild card bucket at the end, we can do that for fun as well.
Yeah, I was thinking that was kind of my first bullet point, actually, in my goals, was just like the show. And for me, I think my most important Magic-related goal is to keep this podcast going as something we enjoy doing and something that people like listening to or watching. And, like I said, Stan's moving shakes things up legitimately. And I think really it provides new opportunities along with some challenges. But I think the opportunities are the things we should talk about here. And you all check me on this. Here's some things I was thinking about. And they're not necessarily goals, but they're things that I think would actually be potentially beneficial or potentially cool. And I think one thing that I'm looking forward to is actually recording the podcast in segments where hey, I'm on the mic on my Sunday morning and Stan Sunday afternoon or evening. And we have I talk with my buddy, and then that's a large part of the episode that's just kind of ready to go. And then that gets stitched together with something else, maybe like a breakdown or a guest segment about like a deck or an innovation. And then Bob's your uncle, as Stan will soon be saying, you got yourself an episode. I think another thing that's a cool opportunity is like individually produced content, like maybe something like a turbo deck dive or like a metagame breakdown or a league video on YouTube. I think would be cool for us to kind of make a part of the content we're making together and individually. And then I think we have an opportunity to just have like shorter guest segments where we don't really need to have someone come on the mic for like 90 minutes. And I think we can just get people on more often for like 20, 30 minute, drop-ins.
Yes, but can we do it? Can we do it? Can we actually talk to somebody for only 20 or 25 minutes? Because that's actually a goal in itself. And one of my goals for the show, honestly, is to keep trying to have us push to have slightly shorter shows overall.
Yes.
I think those shorter interviews become a lot more possible if they're one-on-one. As Shane put it, if we're doing more segments, more compartmentalized pieces of content within a larger episode. If it's just, Dave and Luis Scott Vargas, do they really have that much to talk about?
Oh, I have plenty to talk to LSV about. We go way back. way back. But I do think, I would love to see if having shorter shows helps us out with a couple of things as well. We talked about this earlier, gives us all some more headspace to actually play the game more instead of preparing what turns out to be 2 hours of content more frequently than not on a weekly basis. And also gives us a chance, I think, to just try to be better editors of our content before we get into it. Let's try to boil this down to the good nuggets. Can we get a little, not that I feel like our show is filled with a lot of filler or something like that, but what happens to a show that has the same amount of insights and fun, but has 30 less minutes in it? What is that? Is that the best Magic podcast ever? I don't know.
Yeah. And I think part of that, especially if I have the opportunity to sort of do my own stuff from time to time because of scheduling conflicts, and I still have availability to play and think about my play and still record something, but we don't necessarily align schedules and I'm on my own or with an interview subject, I might look for opportunities to expand the scope of the content in a logical way, but a little bit beyond just purely Pioneer and Modern, which isn't to say that I'm planning to turn this into a Commander or a Standard show, but
They're
for
probably
instance,
better for us, honestly.
well, the last week I've been playing Vintage Cube a little bit, and I'm not an expert enough in the format to really talk about it on the show, nor did I prepare any material to talk about it, but I can see a scenario where next year Vintage Cube comes back. I organize 30 minutes of thoughts on it, my experience, maybe chat with someone about it, or just do it on my own. And then it's like, you guys have a modern section. I have a Vintage Cube section because it's popular at the moment. I believe it's the most popular limited format on Moto whenever it's available.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I could see that being just like a really exciting way to expand my horizons as a player, but also expand the scope of the show a little bit too.
I mean, even Spike is doing Cube during Vintage Cube season. So, the preeminent modern streamer is still taking breaks to play some Cube. So wouldn't be out of place.
Cube rules. The Vintage Cube specifically rules.
Well, let's talk about another way we could expand the show as well that Shane hinted at and that I'm pretty interested in, and that's trying to do some experiments with video of some kind or another as part of the show. I don't know how we'll do that, but I do think that I still think that there might be an interesting way that we can pull off a show that's a little bit more of a good experience for YouTube viewers than it is right now.
Yeah, I in particular want to experiment with variable frame rate. So have some sections in 24 frames per second, other sections in 48. Try to get that Hobbit War of the Five Armies effect.
I mean, I just saw a whole bunch of it in Puss in Boots 2, The Last Wish. That was pretty great. There was some frame rate playing around in there, and I thought it was actually okay in that movie. So
wait, Puss in Boots has 48 frames scenes.
It has different frame rates. I don't think I can vouch for what numbers they are. 120, 220, whatever it takes. But there's definitely some stuff going around in there. But I would love to find a way for us to figure out to kind of put a more visual experience together for people, just because I think it's we've been doing the same format for so long. Video is a channel that's out there that has a lot of people on it that I think, we could figure out a way to produce something that's possible for us to do. We've been worried about it for a long time as far as production time goes. But one of the things that I enjoy in my job is just sitting down and figuring out how to work out these production kind of constraints to put together something like that is sustainable and interesting and, high quality and all those kind of things. So as a personal challenge like this, that's pretty intriguing to me still.
Yeah, taking on new challenges is important. This was a challenge for us 4 years ago, but I think ultimately it became something that we were just doing smoothly. And yeah, I think it's just kind of good to keep looking for ways to keep engaging people and make things that is interesting to us and interesting to the audience out there for sure.
And then one last goal that I had for the show was just I'd love for us to try to figure out a way to come up with one more kind of signature format, not segment kind of thing to add to the arsenal of things we do now. The things that I feel like we have that are sort of things that we do on a repeating basis are deck dives, sleeve believe heave, people's meta, maybe a couple other things that we kind of do
set
in that
reviews.
consistent way. What's that? Set reviews. I would love if there was one other thing we could kind of add to the arsenal of things that we could do. That's just a new way to look at a piece of content.
Yeah, I want to bring back the card dive.
I think that's a great place to start thinking about it. Yeah.
It's been a while since we dove into a single card, and I really want to relitigate surgical extraction. I think now is a really good time.
It's a popular card.
Is it worth a card?
Let's talk about Thought Scour. Let's go back.
Absolutely.
I just want to get Shane to say one more time, I don't think it's okay. It's not okay. Is it okay that people are playing surgical extraction now? No, it's not. It's not okay.
It's not main deck. That was a great moment in the early episodes for sure.
Yeah, my first laugh.
So that's the show, right? Anybody else have any thoughts about the dive down as a going concern, other than the fact that, to underline what we talked about last week, we're trying to figure it out?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be great. Opportunities.
We're gonna have our best year yet. I'm optimistic.
I agree.
We sound like we're anxious, but I'm not really. This is me on record, not anxious.
There will be something.
I want to do some videos. I want to spend some money on expensive cameras.
Yes. Okay. You know what? I wasn't going to make the joke, but I'm glad Shane made it almost at his own expense. Like, this is an opportunity for Shane to research and buy gear.
Oh man,
Which is
I haven't had
his
to buy
favorite
gear for
part.
a long time.
Yeah, we've got all of our gear figured out, but that's because we've been just doing audio. But what if we did video? Like, Shane, what kind of backlights do we want? What about green screen versus blue screen? I want one of those clappers, like that black and white clapper. Like, take
Yeah.
19.
Yeah, perfect. Love it.
Find me a good clapper, Shane, with the right amount of friction and that perfect clap sound.
You know what's funny? This is a complete side note, and I'll likely will remove it from this episode. So I went to my nephew. He's in 6th grade, and went to his band concert at his middle school, right? And they did, of course, Christmas and holiday themed music. And one of the most famous songs, apparently, that an orchestra does involves like a sleigh ride, right? And they get this one thing. There's this one instrument, a percussion thing, and literally it just sounds like a horsewhip. It's like this big wooden like clapper thing, and all I thought about was the gear purchaser finding that thing. It's going to sit in a bin for like the next 20 years.
Is it like the two boards that go together?
Yes, exactly. And it just goes like snap. Yeah, I thought that was wild. Anyway,
Yeah, dude, get us that one of those.
yeah, at least one.
I was about to say that I think that it's called the Vibra-Slap, but that is actually a different instrument.
Speaking of
percussion
vibes,
instrument.
the kids on the vibes, man, they killed it. They were so good. I couldn't believe how good they were on the vibes. Stanislav,
Shane.
Magic the Gathering is a game that we all play.
Ostensibly.
Ostensibly.
Yeah, when we should be working.
I feel like you, I mean, we all have magic related goals, but like I think that you executed on some goals last year really well, and I'm curious what like your next steps might be.
Yeah, well, I really only remember one goal that I set, and then I met pretty early, and then I sort of had to just kind of figure it out from there. And that was, I really wanted to play in one of those like showcase challenges that you need QPs to qualify for. And I earned the QPs really quick because one time I spiked a prelim, got 40 QPs, and then like next time I got to use them, I did and scrubbed out of a big tournament, but at least I got to play. But around that time, I also started getting coached and sort of reevaluating my approach to Magic altogether. And for that reason, I had a pretty good year. Pretty good for myself and my past performance. So my good year meant I trophied 3 times. So looking ahead, I kind of just want to double that. Like, let's get to 6 trophies, 1 every other month. I think it's actionable in the sense that I can make an effort to reach it. It's still like it's going to take luck and skill and good timing. And if I don't meet this sort of like performance goal, it's perhaps not the end of the world, but it's nice to have that North Star to shoot for. Like, let's just get more trophies this year than we did last year. If we can double it, I think that would be a huge accomplishment.
Love it.
Likewise, on the performance train, I only made top 8 in a comp REL once this year. I earned cash in a few events, but actually getting to the top 8, only did that in Green Bay. Let's double it. Let's make top 8 twice. I think I could do it. If I keep playing, at least, I can probably get to another top 8. And even better, like, let's get to the finals. This is the year, I think, that we can finally, like, we can focus in on one deck that, like, I know that I understand really well and do pretty well with. I think I can just, if I stay focused on that and not convince myself for some reason to like play an ill-advised version of Murktide or 4-color Yorion or 4-color Omnath that I picked up after Yorion got banned. Let's just like stick to the goal, stick to what we're good at. Like, I think we'll see our best results yet. So that's some of my performance-oriented thinking for the year. And one last one. I played 4 or 5 RCQs throughout the year across the 2 seasons we had this year. Never got the invite. God, I'd love to get that RC invite.
For sure.
Just one of the seasons. I mean, the problem is you're going to have to play Pioneer. Well, no, you're not going to have to play Pioneer.
No,
Standard
Stars
to
have all
get
sorts of
there.
stuff.
You're just going to have to do it to go to the RCs.
Or, I mean, I might have to play Standard. And there's more than 2 RC seasons per year. And this is going to be
Mhm.
the first time we have a full year of RC seasons. It's not outside the realm of possibility that I could qualify for a modern RC. I think when they first made the announcement of the new organized play system, they said it was going to have modern, pioneer, and standard support. So it could happen at some point.
Yeah. I have my doubts about one of the RCs being anything other than Pioneer and Standard, but I would be thrilled if it was. It would be a great thing for us to cover on the show for sure. Pioneer is good. Covering Modern at that level of competition would be even better. So,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Stanislav, like, I know that these aren't your, I think, the driving goals, but like, you know, I think it's really important for me to critique these, not actually critique them, but like, you know, the stuff like this is so like out of your control. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I think like ultimately where it's like, yeah, with like playing well, continuing to develop, have enough reps, like stuff like this sort of starts happening. I think that's like sort of what stuff like this is, right? It's like, let's say you're winning at 58%, right? Like you're better than average, and just, you know, enough darts thrown at that 58%, you know, win rate is going to get a few bullseye here and there, right? And I think that I don't imagine you staying up late at night and being like, I need to grind. It's December. I didn't trophy
Yeah.
6 times, right? I think it's kind of like just sort of good to be like, yeah, let's just see if I can get 6. That'd be cool. Like here's sort of like a developmental goal. If I see it happen, I know that I'm improving type thing.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it, and you're totally right. Like, this is not how I'm going to necessarily judge myself per se. This is sort of, you know, as I put it, like, this is just the north stars that I'm sort of pursuing and working towards, because these are maybe some of the accomplishments I'd like to reach, but I also fully recognize that I could be doing everything right and still the axle breaks on my vehicle and I catch dysentery and you know,
You
the Oregon Trail's out of
lose an
reach.
oxen when you're fording the river.
Exactly.
Even the banker can lose a few oxen.
Yeah, and to that point, like, I think there's a couple more process-oriented goals that are much more within my control that I have on my cheat sheet. You know, for one, I'd really love to fundamentally improve my understanding of specific matchup dynamics. I think players of a certain skill set recognize, you know, how and why hammer time is good against something like 4-color control, where I might hear it and internalize it and maybe trust it, and maybe we even see that from time to time in results, but like getting down to the granular level and sort of understanding like what are the important cards in given matchups in a vacuum, I think could help me just sort of like understand what I'm playing for, around, and against, and also just be a better analyst, you know, for the podcast. I think that's a really great skill to have, is sort of just like seeing, in this case, the trees from the forest and knowing like what cards are doing against other cards in decks against other decks. And you guys joke about my casual disdain of Pioneer, but I want to like Pioneer. Like, this is the year I'd love to find a Pioneer deck that maybe speaks to me on the same level that Rhino speaks to me in Modern. And even though I will sometimes dabble with other Modern decks, like there's the one I always go back to, and maybe having that in Pioneer, just to have more enjoyable Magic to play, I think would be a good thing to have.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in a
join
similar
us.
vein to what you're talking about, Stan, I just want to learn more new decks. Like, I feel like I have been dabbling around with things here and there. I think I actually spent a good amount of time playing Pioneer this year and learning some new decks. But in Modern, I feel like I want to make sure that I'm up to date with the number of, you know, the way that the metagame really works now, and that, you know, I'm really experiencing the latest decks and not just trying to play like better versions of old decks and things that I'm holding on to from the past. So, you know, like enjoyed Scam this year. I've talked about putting effort into Hammer. I have been doing that a lot actually over the last couple of weeks while I haven't been working. I've probably put in 20 or 25 matches with Hammer so starting to learn, starting to get some wins. I'd love to do the same thing for Breach and just kind of see if I can do some other things going forward like that. But yeah, I just want to expand the palette of things that I play as well.
What else is on your radar, Dave?
Coaching.
Whoa.
Yeah, 100%.
And I see it
100%.
on Shane's list too. Yeah.
You guys
I
want to
would-
finally offer some coaching? Some life coaching?
Yeah, I'm sure people would love to have it. Yeah. But no, I just feel like I really just need outside feedback right now because there's just some stuff that I feel like I'm clearly doing that's like not working in Magic. And I just want to get some feedback from some good players and see what I'm thinking about badly.
Yeah.
Because my win rate on Moto has really taken a dive the last 6 months or so. And I just want to, it's just time for like a refresh.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely, I feel like I'm at just an age of everything in my life where it's like, I've been doing stuff the same way or the way I think is right for so long. And like you just sort of like find yourself in mindsets and habits and you're not really checking yourself as often as maybe you should. And like getting that outside feedback seems like it makes so much sense, right? Where it's like, I do this or I think about this in this way. And they're like, yeah, that's not the way you should be thinking about this.
I'm about to turn 44. I've had these thoughts a lot lately too, Shane. Like you just expanded it out to your whole life. Like, yeah, why am I doing some of these things the way that we're doing them? Like, what am I thinking about? Should I be thinking about differently? Yeah, I agree.
I didn't know that you guys had coaching on the mind, and I will just tell you that, if you find a coach that you click with, and you have so many to choose from, that I think it's very possible that you will. It's like such a low commitment for a lot of fun and potentially like a reasonable amount of upside. Most coaching sessions I've done with people are like at least an hour. Sometimes they go up to an hour and a half, maybe, if like we both have some extra time to like finish the match or fire up another one. But you almost can't go wrong if like you're open-minded and just you want that feedback and you actually like the person you're talking to. It's just like fun playing Magic with someone else, especially someone who's very good.
And it's reasonable. It's like, it seems like underpriced, I have to say, but I'm fine with that.
Demand is low, I think, is the thing. Supply is reasonable to high, but demand is low, and that's economics, baby.
Love it.
I have one more thing I want to say too for Magic. You guys laugh at me, I think, sometimes a little bit because I just basically only play leagues. Like I don't ever play anything other than league games. And I just need to like take my foot off the gas sometimes and just go play in tournament practice sometimes before I hop all the way into leaguing because I feel like I'm not giving myself a chance to actually see how the deck works in a slightly not lower stakes environment, but the people in leagues are just really good. They're really, really good players. And so it's like I don't even give myself a chance to like necessarily figure out how a deck works before I just get blasted by somebody. And that used to work okay for me, but now I feel like I gotta spend some time in my least favorite area of Moto.
Magic's complicated. These decks are complicated, my friend.
Yeah.
Learning like a few interactions or kind of like what the general like pace of even like fetching or like land drops, all that kind of stuff.
You know what I think it is too? I think you get like 2 more turns to figure stuff out in a tournament practice match. You know what I mean? Like, because in leagues, people know what's going on. They know how to attack most of the meta decks. Like the people who are really good, if you get paired into somebody who's got one of those Mox avatars, and you're like, oh boy, this person's just going to know exactly what they're doing against my deck. Having those 1 or 2 extra turns to go, okay, I could have done this. I went down this line, but that was maybe wrong. So now I have time to adjust course. So I know next time to go on that course instead. It made a huge difference with Hammer. I swear I did 2 leagues with Hammer. I was like 1 and 9. And I was like, I'm just going to go play tournament practice. Cause I'm like, I'm not giving up on this. It's a good deck. So I went in there and I played until I suddenly was like, oh, I just got a tournament practice room trophy. You know what I mean? Like I got 5 wins in a row. And then I was like, okay, now I'm going to go back and I'm going to try a league again. And I didn't trophy the league, but it was better.
So a couple things. Tournament practice can be a real double-edged sword. Sometimes it's hard to finish a match because people rage quit against good decks.
Yeah.
Especially if you're piling it like with any aptitude. And that's not always the case, but I've actually found myself doing fewer tournament practice room games for that reason. It's just nearly impossible to finish a match.
Yeah.
And like sometimes I'll get a game or 2 in just to get that comfort level that you're referring to. But as a result, I've actually done more this year, like solitaire, one player in the open play section, just like once or twice, strictly to like figure out what card to do. You know what I mean? Like when I pick up a random new combo deck, just to like know how to execute the combo and like which triggers to focus on and how to organize them. Like, there's almost no benefit to doing that versus like struggling to get through a tournament practice match. That it's important to remember you have that at your disposal as well.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing, Dave, like, and Shane and listeners, like, you've done a league, you go one, or you do a couple leagues and you go 1-9. It's time consuming, but watching the replays, you learn so much from. Like, you will see some of the things you're doing wrong that you don't catch in the moment, especially once you start to have that, like, more perfect information and realize, like, what players are doing too, and you can anticipate the opponent's play. Like, it might teach you a little bit of how to understand what might be an opponent's hand based on some of their decisions during the first couple turns to see like what they're playing towards and around. I think that gets a lot easier when you get in the habit of just like not being burdened by like the stress of being in that match, but just like looking at the replay and getting to like sort of slow it down and start to reconsider like what are the other lines I had in a given position with like the cards in my hand and the cards on the board. And I think that's one of the ways that you might have coaching sessions that you can also just do on your own sometimes to improve your play that way too.
Yeah, there was a recent episode of Grindcast where they were focusing on like what good practice looks like.
Oh yeah,
and I think
with
that
Ash.
was
Great episode.
That was valuable for sure. I think it's good to kind of like think about even how one practices, right? Because I think we've definitely had this conversation thread before where it's like you can be doing something and not growing at it. It's just, it requires a particular kind of mindset, a particular kind of approach to like actually improve on. I think that's really what you're mentioning, Stan, is a really important part of that, which is like how does one assess, right? And that's really far more important than like the wins or the losses.
Well, nothing's more important than the wins.
Good point.
Shane, what's on your mind magic-wise? Anything else?
I mean, the primary thing that I actually really want to do, it's interesting there is, besides of course like the coaching thing, which will be like Magic Online engagement, but I keep saying this and I keep like not really executing on that, and it's partially because of like my lack of ability to really compartmentalize my time very well. But I do want to get to the LGS more regularly than I have in the past. I've said this on mic, I've said this to my wife and my friends, and it's something that like I'm just not really doing. But now that the holiday stuff is over and we can get back into like a more real routine, I think it's just like, put it on the calendar. You know what I mean? Like every other week, every 3 weeks even is more than I'm doing now. And it's just nice to like enjoy that kind of engagement with the community. I like a lot of the local Denver players. I think keeping yourself like paper play practiced is actually pretty important. Like you can, like I seriously was like dropping my deck like the first game when we were down in Atlanta for DreamHack. I was like, what the heck am I doing? Like, how do I fetch? Like, how does one play Magic? But yeah, I think it's just nice to like, see the people in Denver and just make that something where I'm playing Magic, I'm playing Magic in paper, and I'm seeing people, and it's kind of like just a nice thing to do for myself, where it's like not just work, home, see some family, see some friends now and then, but like, having like a third place where it's like, hey, work, home, Magic. And I think those kind of things are important, I think just sort of for, keeping yourself engaged in different parts of your life in different ways. And
I love that for you, Shane.
Oh, thank you. And this, of course, goes against the last goal. And Stan, I think I saw this in your notes, but I need to sell some cards. Like,
oh yeah,
like a lot of cards.
Twist. This is also in my mind as well right now.
I mean, there's just too many cards. Like, I just want to keep the decks I like playing right now and just be like, look, let's not have some sunk cost here. Like, I can sell these for 70% of TCG low. They're taking up space. The mental overhead of dealing with them and sorting through them and riffling through them to find the cards I want. It's like, I'm mostly playing on Magic Online. What am I doing here? Like, I think like the real issue for me is like, if I could just bling out rhinos and just have some like really cool infinity shocks and like cool extended art on everything. But like modern doesn't work like this if it ever did, where you can just be like, I'm going to invest in my favorite deck and I'm going to play this for like 4 years.
I think we thought it worked like this for a little bit, or at least, and I hate to say this because I'm not a big fan of this mindset, but I think that it worked this way until Modern Horizons 1 a little bit. And now there's a bit of a threat that it's going to go on. Yeah.
I mean, it's Modern Horizons 3 is what, 2024? So, I mean, maybe I'm good
and
for
the Hobbit set though is modern legal.
Yeah, Attack of the Hobbits is coming out, I think Q2 or Q3. But to that point, like whether or not Lord of the Rings is an impactful modern set remains to be seen. I think what MH2 maybe showed me, and I'm curious if you agree, is that modern is really stable between modern focus sets. And we haven't had a standard set create like a massive shakeup in the way that War of the Spark and like did Eldraine even have a massive Eldraine introduced Oko, but like post Oko, what Eldraine cards do we still see that like aren't a handful of adventure spells here and there?
Emery.
Yeah.
I mean, there was Once Upon a Time that got banned as well.
Right.
There's a lot of cards. Yeah.
I think it's a little easier right now to have one deck for longer periods of time with the understanding that like you're going to maybe have to retool it or pivot when we have something as earth-shattering as Modern Horizons, and maybe that's okay.
I think it's just like I can't live in fear though. Do you know what I mean too? Where it's like, oh, I need to have access to all these cards all the time, and it's like, or this card's only worth $3. Why should I sell it? It's like, well, because then it's gone. Then you don't have it.
Then I don't have it.
Then you don't have it anymore, and that's okay. It's okay not to have it. It's just kind of a larger project, and like I'm just tired of having like random stacks of Magic cards. Like I'm getting slightly better at it. I have more cabinetry for it. It's still like it's just too much. It's just too much, and it needs to go away.
Yeah. I mean,
Curse of the cabinetry. Beware, Shane. That's what'll get you.
My collection's extremely under control right now, but going through it recently, I was just like, oh yeah, I probably need to get rid of some of these cards.
Yeah, as I put it in my section, is like I need to find the courage to sell some cards for all the reasons that you outlined, Shane. I think you really nailed it. And I think a couple of things that I learned this year from the events we've gone to and like selling stuff to vendors is the return on investment you get from vendors that you don't get from an LGS, like is a nice little added boost of confidence and courage to like liquidate sections that if you're honest with yourself, if I'm honest with myself, like haven't played in years or maybe have never played and I'm just kind of like sleeved up for the day that I might. So I'll be there with you. Well, maybe not SCG or maybe not Magic Con, whatever the thing in Philadelphia is, maybe not for that one, but in the next big one, I'll come back. We can go to a tournament together and we can liquidate some cardboard.
All right. Any other thoughts about Magic before we wrap this up?
No, just, try to play some more. Just try to like, keep myself engaged, keep myself like learning new things. And I mean, part of that will just be like, hey, let's not play Rhinos. You know how Rhinos works. Let's try something new. Like I like you're diving into a known good deck, Dave. And I think it's kind of something to talk to a coach about too. It's just like, hey, I want to get good with this. Like, let's focus on my Rhino play right now. And then like, after a few sessions, we'll start something completely new. I think there's just a lot of game to play, right? But Dave, do you have any kind of like personal goals? Anything that you just want to like do a little bit differently, or just ways to keep yourself entertained out there?
I think my big one actually just relates to what you were saying, Shane, about like questioning things I've been doing for a long time and why they're being done that way.
Like how you crack your egg, how you make your soup.
Even down to that, like exactly. Like what are my techniques for this? Like, do I have to be the person who always wears black V-neck t-shirts all the time and that's just all I do? Like, I just, like I said, I'm coming into middle age, gonna do some weird stuff here. So the main thing that I had is just stay. I'm gonna try to stay curious and engaged in the world, even though there's lots of forces that are trying to make you sort of not do that. Like that's probably the big thing that I've been thinking about the last couple of weeks, interacting with certain people in my life who maybe aren't staying engaged in the whole the whole world and being like, man, I do not want that for me going forward in my life.
Yeah, I've been finding some like even just easy stuff, right? Where it's like a new podcast. Like I'm listening to I think I'm engaging a little bit less with Magic podcasts right now, unless the topic is really interesting, because I sort of just use them as like time killing, right? Where it's like I'm driving to work, I have a commute now. Let's see what this episode's about, and like just have Magic noise. And I'm trying to like have different kind of noise right now, where it's like, oh, like randomly I came across like a 7-part podcast that's all about the history of like essentially like preppy fashion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
I listened to that person on
it was on You're Wrong About, and I downloaded the whole season of her actual full-length podcast, and like it's just interesting. It's just like interesting to sort of like just a total new topic to listen to, and to like, and there's a lot of stuff out there, right? And I think sometimes it takes a little bit of effort to like, find the signal through the noise, or find something that you really engage with or really like. But I think that that's something that I me, I always like diving into new topics, but like you can do it in bite-sized ways as well. I don't have to like, become like a fashion critic by any means. I can just be like, yeah, this is a cool 7-part series. I learned something. Let's move on to the next new interesting thing.
Yeah. I feel a lot like you and I are tipping dangerously close to being like, we're going to go out and buy sports cars soon. Like we're entering like that era of our
perfect
40s,
middle age.
Of your 40s.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, in Colorado, we buy like large 4-wheel drive vehicles and like start going like off-roading and stuff like that. So
yeah, and athleisure.
Yeah,
I know.
that'd be perfect.
I skipped that episode of You're Wrong About. Should I listen to it, or should I just dive right into the 7-part series?
Just do the 7-part series.
Yeah, it's a good episode if you're wrong about, but you might as well just listen to the show.
I just went straight to Beanie Babies.
Perfect.
That's a good one, too.
That was good.
I listened to that one, too.
That was good.
Sarah Marshall listens. I know. Hey, Sarah.
Hey, Sarah.
known Yorian player. Sorry for your loss this year, but you'll find your way.
I feel like you have a lot of life changes coming up, Stan. Do you have any kind of goals related to those?
My wife and I were talking about this just yesterday, or 2 days ago on our drive to our New Year's dinner. What are our resolutions and goals for the year? Considering that we are about to uproot our lives. It would be nice to just make a good new friend in England. Doesn't that sound great? Just have an English pal, mate. I think that's what they call it, mate.
Yeah,
really improve my British accent. I guess that's goal number 1.
You have to call him our kid, is what I've heard. As I told you via text, that you have to go, how's our kid doing today? Is that how people talk in Manchester, apparently.
I think it's more like our kid.
Yeah,
like
it's AR.
Like a pirate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. This is boring and it's not too personal, but it's about my personal life. But it's just like figure out how to build a new home and how to like assimilate to a new culture where people talk different and use different words for things that I'm not familiar with, and probably reevaluate the things I eat and have access to, because certain foods just don't exist in England as readily unless you cook them yourselves.
Vegetables. Yeah.
It's just like learn how to eat beans 3 times a day.
Beans on toast.
That's still a work in progress. Like honestly, my short-term goals is like find a place to live. We only have an Airbnb booked right now because renting a place in the UK while you're in America is a near impossible task. So we'll let you know how that goes once we do it.
I mean, you can fit that in between prepping for episodes, right? Finding a house.
Yeah, I just need to figure out if I want to live in Chorlton cum Hardy or West Didsbury Village.
Or Cheshire, apparently.
Well, Cheshire's a whole region. That's like saying, like, do you want to live in Cook County or do you want to live in Glencoe? David, you fool.
What are you, the sheriff of Cheshire now? Is that what you're telling me?
I don't know if I can afford that council tax band, David.
Well, my friends, we do not usually check in on our goals, but I think that we and the audience will be seeing how we execute on our show goals. And, if we start talking about our coaching sessions, and we're moving forward on that as well. So thanks for sticking with us for another year. And I'm looking forward to some cool stuff in 2023.
Yeah. And so this is my last episode for a few weeks, maybe a month. We'll see. I'm hoping to be able to join you guys sooner than later, but I know there's going to be a little resettlement period where I kind of figure myself out. Try on a couple, like, do I want to do like a South English accent? Do I want to just like dive right into like a thick Scots accent? I don't know. So hopefully new me when I'm back, but I'm excited to listen to the Dive Down as a fan for the next few weeks as I take the tram to work along the canals of Manchester. But until then, that does wrap up this week's episode. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you get the latest episodes as soon as they come out. And if you use Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating and review. If you'd like to submit a question to the podcast or just reach out in general, you can tweet us at The Dive Down, all one word, or email thedivedown@gmail.com. If there are any members or listeners of The Dive Down in Manchester or Northern England, please do reach out to me via The Dive Down. I'd love to hear from you and figure out where I can play and where the good games are at. If you'd like to support the show monetarily, you can join our Patreon over at patreon.com/thedivedown. Also, shout out to Mana Traders for sponsoring The Dive Down. Sign up for Mana Traders using promo code TheDiveDown10, all one word, to get 10% off your first 2 months of renting Magic Online cards. And also get some amazing shaving soaps, body soaps, fragrances, and more at Barrister & Mann using promo code TheDiveDown15 for 15% off your first order. And if you're playing Magic with paper cards, you can save some money over at Nerd Rage Gaming with code DIVE8 to get 8% off your order from NRG. As always, special thanks to the bands Nowhere and Spaceflood for letting us use their music. And until next week, get out there and have a happy new year!